So I wrote in how people become an owner, and they don't buy in, they pay with their time. So once a team member has worked for the company 2,500 hours, they're an owner. Instead of employee owners, we call them co-owners. They become a co-owner and they get a share in the profits at the end of every year. We wanted to continue to do all of the benefits that we were already providing. All of that is in the trust. That really was one of the hard parts of the transaction. You're thinking of what's this company going to look like in 100 years?
She just sold her company. She sat in a room full of men negotiating the biggest deal of her lifetime. Wait, she sold for how much? I can't even believe she managed to get double her valuation. Let's keep this just between us.
Good morning, my fans of the Exit Whisperer. How are you? I'm hanging out in the library today. The store's open. Let's close that right up. I don't need you to see it. Sometimes it looks like I'm in a closet when I record over here, but I'm trying to find the right podcast space. You know what I'm saying? Like I gotta step it up. I gotta throw a face on. You know what I'm saying? I don't even throw a face on for you guys when I do this on video, but hopefully you're channeling like my inner authentic self there. So speaking of authentic, I cannot wait to introduce you to my next guest, Miren Oca, who's the founder of Oca Aquatics, which is a swim school, which she started at 19 years old after she became pregnant in college. She started as a swim instructor. She built it to have lots of employees. Then she built 5 locations. Then she bought the real estate. And then when it was time to exit, she really did not want to go in a path where they would destroy her company, which was based on like doing good in the world and for her employees. And so she researched a ton of options and went with something that very few people in the US know about. It's called an employee trust. Not an ESOP, not a stock ownership plan, but an employee trust. That turned out to be the best choice she could have made. I can't wait for you to listen to her. She's the coolest. And just get ready. Miren, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm excited.
I'm so excited to have you here because we're going to talk about something that I really haven't talked about. I've talked about some ESOPs in some ways, but not an employee trust. So we're going to talk about that in a minute, but going way back before that, let's talk about the start. How did you get started with Oca Aquatics?
I started my business in college. I was a student at Tulane University in New Orleans, and I was getting my degree in biochemistry. I was going to go to med school. I was going to become a doctor, and then I got pregnant in college. So I was 19 and this is the situation I found myself in. And I decided I had my son, and then I decided I would start this little business teaching swimming lessons. I finished my degree here in Miami, but I thought I'll go to med school when he's older. And so I started the business when he was 1, and now he is 32. We are celebrating our 31-year anniversary in 4 days. And we've had tremendous success. We've had these amazing opportunities. It's been a really great ride, and I never went to med school.
Wow. Okay. So you find yourself pregnant at 19. You're going to delay med school. How does the business actually come to be? Are you like, did you have capital to start it? Did you just start it bootstrap? Like, give me, what amazing bravery, Miren. Like, I'm in awe.
Well, thank you. I was broke. I needed to make a living, and
yeah.
I kind of fell back on what I knew how to do. I had taught swimming lessons in high school.
Yep.
So I just started teaching swimming lessons, and I started going to homes and private schools and private, renting pools at different places. I rented 17 different pools in Miami, like country clubs, out clubs, things like that. I just, I had grown up in a family business. My parents had restaurants, and they were immigrants, and they had this restaurant, and it was amazing food, but it was not an amazing business. It was, I watched them struggle, and I thought, there is no way I will ever go into business.
Yeah.
But here I found myself kind of diving into the deep end of business. And so I spent a lot of time at bookstores with my son. We would read books together. He would read his, I would read mine. And I do joke that I owe Barnes and Noble a lot of money because I never bought the books back then.
You just sat there. I used to do this too. The kids section, like in that little section, just sit there and read all day. I did the same thing.
Totally. And I just couldn't afford it. But now I'm a huge book lover. I have now a library here. I have a library at the office. I love books. We have a book club. So I think I paid them back. But no, it was one of those things where I was the accidental entrepreneur and I had to learn as I was going and as I was growing. And books really helped me. They really, really helped me. And now I still do a lot of books, but audio.
Yeah.
A lot of audiobooks. So.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So you start by teaching swimming. I can picture your whole arc. Like, here you are, you're 19, you have a baby, you start doing swimming lessons because it's what you know. How does it go from Miren, the swimming instructor doing private lessons, to this large business?
As the more I taught, the more I really loved the business, but I loved hiring people and bringing them in and growing them. And it was just getting really fun. I started, because I really love what we were doing. The work we're doing is life-saving work. It's working with children in the water. It's amazing.
Right.
As the business grew and as we started to have some success, I really loved the people we were hiring. We're hiring younger audience. It's a lot of college students, and it was really fun to see them coming into the business and growing and everything. So one day I just decided, I think I'm going to keep doing this. But if I do this, I need to go indoors. I really, Miami, just so many outdoor pools here in Miami. Yeah. But I really need to grow and I need to build. So I started looking for a warehouse or looking for a building where I could build a pool inside the building. And I did find that. It took me a while. It took probably 12 years in the business. And I actually found a crazy landlord that would let me build a pool inside of his building. And I did. I built that location. It took a long time to get open. It was a really hard uphill journey all the way, construction project, the whole bit. But in a period of 10 years, from 2009 to 2019, we opened 5. So if you build it, they will come. It grew and grew and grew and grew and grew. And it was amazing. And now we teach about 6,500 swimming lessons a week in high season with 165 team members. And it's just been a really amazing journey, providing life-saving skills to the community, but also we've kept that mission of growing our team members while they work with us. And so we grow them under this umbrella of environmental and social responsibility. We're a certified B Corporation. We're conscious capitalism members. We're really focused on using business as a force for good. And that has really, I think that has helped our business success because our team members have been so happy. They've stayed a long time. They've helped the business grow. And that's really been healthy, for our bottom line.
First of all, I'm obsessed with your whole story. Incredible. I'm thinking back now to the Miren who is opening the first location. So do you have to take on a lot of debt to be able, so you leased it. You did not buy the locations, correct?
I leased the location.
Okay. Tell me about that moment. Like you're going from, okay, I've hired a few people and we're bouncing all over and teaching lessons. And now we're going all in. Tell me about how you sourced the capital to do that if you needed capital and what it felt like to you. There must have been excitement, but was there also fear? Like, how did you deal with all of that?
Yes, and yes. Okay. So I had been successful. I've been saving, putting some money away. And I had my banking relationships and I thought, they're going to loan me money. We're a big client. And that was totally the wrong. They didn't. I did not get bank financing for my first location. I had to do friends and family. And I had to use all my savings. I had to mortgage my home. I had to, I maxed out every single credit card you could possibly imagine. And it was the only way to get it open. But once I got it open, it was really, really successful. And it really did well. And honestly, I was just going to do one. I was not going to have lots of swim schools. And by accident, I was going to pick up picking up some supplies one day that we needed. And I was in another part of town in a building. And I was picking it up from a pool supply store and they were getting evicted when I showed up.
Wow. And
when I walked in the door, I thought, well, this would make a really great spot for a swim school. And that became our second location.
Wow.
Yeah, I leased that one and I did the same thing. I was able to get a little bit bank financing, then we had people really, because when you first go to a bank and say, I'm going to put a pool in a building, I'm going to knock a hole and build a big pool. That was just not something they wanted to get behind. But then as we started, we had proof of concept.
I would imagine that once you have one, it's easier to get 2 and 3, but it's that first one. I'm just picturing you. I'm so inspired by you. One thing when I work with a lot of people who work in any kind of like professional services space, it's the choice and the balance and the thinking between I can just do this like as a consultant, right? On either side. I worked in the agency space, you worked in the swim space, but like I could just do this, make a living and have it go, or I can lean in and build it to be something bigger. Do you think, I know you said you didn't necessarily like envision that it would be this, but was there something inside you that always felt that you wanted it to be bigger than just you?
Because we focus so much on personal and professional development with our team, and we're growing these wonderful team members, and we don't want them to leave.
Right.
So I think a lot of the growth of the business was driven by the growth of people in our organization. We had team members that were ready to move up. And so because of that, we were building this bench of managers and this bench of team members. And so that's what led us to 3, 4, and 5. And I bought 3, 4, and 5. So I own commercial real estate in Miami, which is fabulous. But those, it was just great because if we did not have the managers coming up through our building, we've never hired somebody from outside the business into leadership. We've grown them. And, we have a lot of team members who work with us and then go away, get their college degree and go away and get their real job. But then they come back to us.
Come back.
They do. They come back. Yeah, they come back as employees or they come back with their own children. And so that's amazing. We really
amazing.
Yeah.
I really identify with growth being fueled, like some of the internal fuel about taking care of and fostering your employees. And that's why I love that you're a B Corp. I love all of that. And that actually leads to the type of exit that you had. So talk to us about this and how you even learned about the concept of employee trust, what they are. I think a lot of my audience does not realize that this is an option.
And that's why I like talking about it, because I think it's a really great alternative. About 10 years ago, 9 years ago, actually, I was approached by private equity. I didn't know what PE ever meant. I had no idea, but we were having such great success in the business. And we got on their radar somehow, and they were rolling up a lot of children's activities. So they started talking to us and coming to talk to us. And I saw a couple of friends in the industry sell, and they weren't 100% satisfied with what happened to their business afterward. So I thought, I did talk to them. I call it the alphabet soup of succession planning. My first step is I looked at my family, the little boy who changed the trajectory of my life, IAN. He was the first person I went to, and I said, look, do you want this? And he worked with us for 14 years. He loved the work we were doing, but he didn't want mommy's business. He wanted to do his own.
Yeah, I get that.
So he said, I think you need to get it into hands of people who are going to be more passionate about it. So I did talk to PE, but only to learn, I was really learning, but I looked at DIY. Okay, I took a little course for a semester at Stanford on succession planning, on, how to phantom stock and how to do stock appreciation rights and all these things. And I still wasn't convinced because I didn't think they'd have the money to buy the business from me.
Yes, I think that's the primary concern. That's the primary concern from so many. I know when I looked at this, I did not look at an employee trust at all. I would have loved to have been able to pass it on to my employees, but I didn't feel that I could have done it.
Yeah, I've heard that from so many people now that we're talking about it. So I looked at, I found co-ops. Co-op was the right fit for me because it was a little democratic model and people supposed to buy in. And then I found ESOP and I thought ESOP's the answer. This is great. And I went down that path. I hired an attorney. I did evaluation. I did feasibility studies. I did everything. And I found out in the line, it is a retirement benefit. So it's a lot of oversight by the Department of Labor and ERISA.
Yes.
Hopefully so. It has to be because it is a big instrument. But it could still be sold to private equity. The trustee is fiduciary. And if somebody comes along with a big carrot, you have to sell. And I really was concerned that, I had spoken to a lot of these private equity guys. It was all guys. And they all looked at me in the eyes and said, we're not going to change you. We're going to replicate you. And
100%. Yeah. And you're like, okay, sure. Thanks. We're not going to change a thing. Just your margins. Just squeeze every ounce of joy out of your employees. And it's all good. Yeah.
Well, I really didn't want that. So I found the EOT. The EOT, there were only about 30 when we actually did the transaction in the United States.
Okay.
But it is the primary method of employee ownership in the United Kingdom. So did a lot of research, talked to a lot of people. It took me about 2 years to do all this research, but it was the right fit. It really was. It's trust ownership,
Yep.
just like an ESOP.
Right.
However, it's you write whatever you want into the trust. So I wrote in how people become an owner, and they don't buy in, they pay with their time. So once a team member has worked for the company 2,500 hours, they're an owner. And how that works out is we call them, instead of employee owners, we call them co-owners because we don't have
Okay.
the word employee.
Okay.
And they become a co-owner and they get a share in the profits at the end of every year, after debt's paid and after everything, reserves, we have reserves accounts and everything. We could write into the trust. We wanted to strive to maintain our B Corp certification. We wanted to continue to do all of the benefits that we were already providing. We wanted to continue to guide our team members under this framework of environmental and social responsibility. All of that is in the trust. And I could put whatever I wanted. The trust is extremely, extremely flexible. And so that really was one of the hard parts of the transaction because you have to think of so many different, you're thinking of what's this company going to look like in 100 years, if you really want to go that way. But the board of directors also helps, make some of the decisions down the line too.
Okay. Explain to me the steps. So you start out, you say, okay, I want to do a trust. Do you borrow, so extracting for you, it borrows again, they value the company, you get that value of the company. Then what happens next?
So I did 3 valuations because
Okay.
I really wanted to see, okay,
Yep.
I was doing this transaction in the private equity space. If I were doing with an ESOP, I did an ESOP
Yep.
valuation
Yep.
with an EOT. So I got a really fair valuation. I was
Good.
really happy with it.
Yep.
And then I went to my bank, big bank here that everybody knows about. And they had no idea what this was. And they were really scared of it. They were.
Yes.
I did find some banks that were willing to, some B Corp banks actually, that were willing to finance the transaction. However, it would have only been about 40%.
Okay.
And interest rates were quite high at the time.
Okay.
So I talked to my attorney, I'm not ready to go anywhere. What happens if I were to do seller financing? So I chose to do seller financing. There's a note. I'm making interest. It's the best investment I know of, and so I get a note payment every month.
Did you do the 40% plus the note?
Nope, I did the whole 100%.
Okay. So when you do seller financing, essentially you're being paid out from all of the profits. Exactly. From the cash flow of the business. So you were paid out from the cash flow of the business, and then the employees have ownership, which passes on the legacy long term. They have the profit share from whatever's left after your payout.
The note is paid out. Well, there are a couple of ways you can structure it. You can start the profit payments after the note is paid, and some people have all the profit going towards paying down the note. I did it differently. These are the monthly note payments, pay those down, and make sure we pay a certain amount into reserves, a certain amount into a CapEx fund, just savings as you should. And whatever is left goes to the owners. And I told them in the first couple of years, it's not going to be a lot. It's going to be very little. And somebody said, okay, well, how much? And I said, $17. You're going to get $17 the first year.
Yep.
Because I didn't want them to buy the car or think about,
Right. Be like, okay, I'm an owner now.
Yes.
Right. Because that's the other thing that's so interesting is that employees don't always think like entrepreneurs. So they don't realize the behind the scenes of sometimes what happens with cash flow or anything else. And so they have to sort of learn to think a little bit differently.
So I'm glad you brought up that point. One of the things, going back to that $17, when we actually did our first profit share, it was about 4% of their salary.
Okay.
They got an extra boost of 4%, which was significant. It was more significant than $17. So they all very, very happy. And there's a really great reaction video on Instagram that we did when we told them about it. It was fun.
So awesome.
But you mentioned something about thinking like an owner.
Mm-hmm.
So for the last couple of years, actually since about COVID, we really started introducing this. We did introduce, we've done personal financial literacy for a long time. After COVID, we started doing open book management, and we started teaching them about business financials and reading P&Ls and understanding the flow of money through a business and keeping money for reserves and putting money aside for the equipment when it goes down. We call it, a culture of ownership, and we call it our Own It culture. But we started that 2 full years before we actually did the transaction. So that when you flip the light switch and you become an employee-owned company, everybody doesn't start thinking like an owner. That's not how it works.
Right.
You will need to do the homework ahead of time. And I think that was super important to our transaction, is that they were already on the path of thinking like an owner. So, and I think everybody can have a culture of ownership, whether you're an employee-owned company. because it really is about responsibility and accountability.
Another thing that it gives you that I think is so interesting, like when you sell to PE, a lot of people talk about this. You sell to PE, you sell to a strategic, you lose all control. It's
Mhm.
no longer your path to direct.
Yes.
But when you do this, it's no longer your path in that you have other owners with you, but they
Mhm.
are the folks that you've nurtured and grown through the organization. So I would imagine it's a much more pleasant form of exit. Was there anything that you learned that you weren't as happy with, or was it like this was just right on?
Well, you brought up a couple of things. Is one is I chose to stay. I didn't have to stay,
Yes.
but I wanted to. I'm
Yeah.
not. I didn't want. I wasn't ready to go yet.
Yep.
So, and everybody says, "Well, what changed with the transaction?" And I say, everything changed, and nothing changed
Right.
because everything changed in the ownership, but really nothing changed with the management. We have our leadership team in place. We have our structure, our governance structure, how we do everything, and things just continue on as they are. We already had a lot of transparency with our open book financials. We want feedback from our front line because they have the best ideas. So we're always looking for their input. So that didn't change significantly. But that's because I wanted to stay. I think that other businesses that I know that are in EOT chose to leave, and they had a successor in place and they did everything, and that was great. But I really wanted to stick around for a bit. I think a lot of people, exiting a business is the most significant decision they'll make in their business ever. And so many people are unhappy afterwards. Within a year of the transaction, they're unhappy.
75%
That's
experience
crazy.
profound regret
That's
after they sell.
crazy. Yeah. And I have not had any regret. In
Me
fact,
too.
I've had so much joy. I've had so much I think the team members have had so much joy. It's been really fun to see them show ownership on a just even higher level, and just watch them continue to be excited about the company. They own the challenges, they own the results, but they own the future.
Yeah.
And so I think that that's really, really cool, especially with our young team members.
So awesome. Okay, I have a question for you that I want to make sure I have a real understanding. And so when you do this and we've seller financed, was there once you did it, was there a moment where you had a major change for you financially, or because it was seller financed, was it more just continuing of your already successful
It
work?
was. I think it really was very similar to that. Maybe there was a little bit more.
Yeah.
It's a typical mergers and acquisitions deal. So you
Yeah.
do have to think about, as the notes are coming in, and we were
Yeah.
talking a little bit
Yeah.
earlier about tax strategy
Yes.
and, how money's coming in and
Yes.
everything. So we did have to do a lot of planning, strategic planning, but I think that it was very similar to the profits coming in before.
Right.
So this just puts it on a path to, I know what I want for this business. I know I'm going to get it over time. Had I gotten it all out immediately, I would have had to take that money and put it somewhere, invest it somewhere. And I could put it in the market, I could put it in different, things, but the business that I know best, that I know has a really great return, that's where I decided to keep the investment. So,
Let me
yeah.
tell you something. I totally agree with you. When I sold
Mhm.
and got a lump sum, so I sold to strategic, I got 3 lump sums at different times
Okay.
and put them in the market. The anxiety that even though the market's like relative, it's long tail, not pulling it anywhere. The anxiety I feel about something that I don't know well versus betting on myself, it's really there. And so I hope people hear this, because I think it's very important to look at the type of transition that you had as a really, not just like a viable option, but one that is so good for your employees, for the world, for tax. There's all kinds of good benefits to this.
Right.
It's just an alternative way of looking at it, which is so awesome.
I think that's the perfect word for it. It's an alternative. It's not perfect for everyone.
Yeah.
But when you're looking to exit, you need to look at every single option, because I've had so many people tell me, I wish I had known this existed.
Yes.
And so that's why I talk about it. That's why
Yeah.
I want to talk about it. And I want to be a case study. I want to, show, look what happens long term. So I really think that you're right on, is that it is a great alternative. You have to look at everything, but everybody's in a different spot. I was 52 when I chose this transaction. I didn't want to go anywhere. I wasn't ready to go anywhere. So I knew I would be here for a bit. But if you're older, if you need money off the table right away, if you have health, there are different things for different people and different.
100%.
Look at all of them.
100%. And did you end up keeping the real estate? You kept the real estate?
I did. I
Yeah.
kept the real estate, so I have an income stream there too.
Yep. And do you recommend that if you had to do, I'm sure if you had to do it again, you would have done more and more on the real estate side of the, did you buy 1 and 2 or did you?
Well, no, I own 4.5 and 1 and 2. I have first right of refusal, but
Okay.
don't have them in the market right now.
Okay. Got it. That is awesome. I honestly, Miren, you're so inspiring. I actually think about my own daughter a little bit when I'm hearing your story because she's interested in opening theater schools. And I think it's like, I'm going to show her this interview because you're very, very inspiring, not just for folks who fancy themselves as entrepreneurs, but for like Main Street businesses. I think it's really, really wonderful to hear your story. And I'm so happy you maintain the B Corp status. And it's just, it's really wonderful, wonderful, wonderful stuff. Thank you so much for coming on today.
Absolutely. It was my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
You are awesome. I loved your story. I'm literally sending it to Charlotte right up because there's such a lack of like a theater school with a brand in our area, and I think she could like open them all over Long Island and buy real estate.
Absolutely. She could buy real estate. She could, develop people. She can do all these things, but it's such a great legacy too, because
it is.
Does she work with children? Does she work with young adults?
Children and young adults.
So, just having children, what's really cool is that right now we have children who learn to swim with us. We've been in business 31 years.
Yep.
We have children who learned to swim with us, who then came back to work with us.
Yep.
And now they're owners. We're co-owners. That's the kind of a cool thing, to see. Just seeing people come back is really fun. That's a testament to.
It's amazing.
We're pretty happy there. So
it's really incredible. I'm so happy for you. I love the story. I love Ian. I love the story of Ian. It's so cute. That's amazing. What's he doing now? What did he end up doing?
Oh, he's working in insurance. He's working in a completely different industry. Yes.
And you only have one?
Just one. Yes. Do you have more? Do you have
three?
And how old is your daughter?
Okay. That daughter's 21. Then I have a 17-year-old daughter who's going to California, going to USC. And it's too far. I'm in New York. Work. And then I have a 9-year-old son. So I had a son later.
Yeah. That's great.
Awesome.
That's so great.
Well, I'm super, super excited to get your podcast up. I will be in touch. And then, I have a community for exited female founders.
I've seen the email, so I will take a look at that.
I'll send you that for sure. And that would be great. So would love to have you join. Love it.
Thank you, Carrie. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. Thanks, Miren.